Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing very well. Welcome to the first webinar by the eCommerce Association of Ghana, where we're asking, is Africa e-commerce ready for post-COVID demand surge? So today we're going to be looking at our e-commerce in terms of how we've been managing through the COVID, as well as also look at some of the opportunities that are happening now, and then also that we can expect to happen moving into what has been termed as the new normal. So this is what's on the agenda. In a moment, we're going to do some introductions. Then I'll give a bit of a synopsis, a summary, just to get us all on one page. We'll take some perspectives from the panel, and then we will start going into some questions. If you are joining us for the first time or coming on Zoom for the first time, please, as we are going through the session, if you have questions in front of you on your dashboard, you'll see Q&A. You can post questions there, and I'll be monitoring it as we're going through the discussions, and we will ask the questions as we go along. If a question has already been answered by the panelists, we probably will not repeat it, just so that we can take on more questions. If you have comments, etc., please feel free to put them in the Q&A box there, as I'll be monitoring those questions. Okay. So I'll start to briefly introduce myself, then I'll move along our panelists. I'm Anita Riafi Esino, and I'm a board secretary of the eCommerce Association of Ghana, and I'm your host for today. I'm also in the e-commerce space. I run an e-commerce business as well, so some of this conversation happening very much. I have some experiences in it as well as an e-commerce business. Okay, so I'm going to move over to Albert to introduce himself, and we'll just kind of go along for everyone to introduce themselves. Because we only have 1 hour, you see that I'll be trying to move the flow so that we can cover as much as possible within the time span. So over to you, Mr. Albert, to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Albert Bigger. I'm founder and CEO of Zuba Shop. We like to pride ourselves in being the premier online retail store in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Diana, I don't know if she's joined us yet. Are you with us? Okay, maybe she's not joined yet. So we'll move over to Joseph. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Joseph Abakuri. I'm the Business Development Manager for Flutterwave in Ghana. So Flutterwave, basically, we are a digital services provider and solutions provider for merchants all across Africa, including Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and Kenya. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joseph. And then over to you, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Sapon, the head of digital media for Tonaton.com, popularly known as Ghana's largest marketplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So when Diane joins us, we will get her to introduce herself. Okay, so before we start, I'll just like to just talk about the eCommerce Association. The eCommerce Association of Ghana has actually been in existence informally since 2013. We've been doing e-commerce expos, e-commerce conferences, and kind of been working through what an association will look like. So officially founded in 2019, meaning registered as an association legally, and with the purpose of setting standards, encouraging good practice, providing information, providing use of e-commerce, and making it a driving force of economic growth in Ghana. So we're not trying to be a regulatory body, we're trying to be a professional kind of standard voice for the e-commerce industry, and we're hoping that we're going to develop an association that is very active, meaning we have active members, active executive board, to really help champion the e-commerce, not just in Ghana, but also in other parts of Africa, because it's all in our interest to kind of connect as well to our regions. So whether you're an established e-commerce business in Ghana, or you're still planning your journey, or you're just joining the association, to open doors to greater knowledge or even visibility in terms of what you're doing, we would recommend that you engage and actually join the association. We do need to have structure in the way that this industry go, and as industry players, we need to be the ones to come together to kind of shape it, even in terms of looking, asking for policy change or for anything to happen. When we're a collective, we can do it more effectively. So that is the e-commerce association. Because of COVID, it's kind of affected our plans of launch and that, but we are working on a launch and putting all the information together so we can engage the community well, for you to know what the value of being part is all about. Okay, so just to say, just 6 reasons why you should become a member. So growth, promotion of online business, having access to data and research. We actually intend to do a lot of research and actually get data. We need to start to build our own local content on data so that it helps us to make decisions and run our businesses more effectively. Advocacy, really championing advocacy for the industry. Networking events. Right now, because of COVID, you've got to think about how you can operate amidst all of it. So using Zoom meetings, webinars, etc., to engage with members or potential members. Overseeing business missions and events. Already before, just even before we formally registered, we've had a lot of other associations on the continent and also in the developing nations who have connected with us with various products and services and things that they want to bring to our commerce members. So definitely, we're also looking for opportunities outside of our space as well, and we intend to champion that as a very valued service for our members. And then, of course, there will be obviously some free webinars, training sessions and whatnot, because we intend to use our membership fees well, where we can subsidize things to try and also build the capacity of our e-commerce members. Discounts on industry events, conferences, seminars, and of course any other paid activities that we're doing, which is all part of generating revenue to run the association. We really are trying not to have to be dependent on corporates, or we have to stand as an association. So we've put strategies to make sure that we do things that will help us to run, so we don't become dependent on any one particular institution or anything, so we can be independent in our activities. So the annual membership fees are, there's individual membership, which is $200. There's SME membership for SMEs for 10 to 49 employees, so 500, and then large members, it's $1,000. Now we know that obviously COVID is here and things are hard, so but if you really want to join, you can just engage with us and we'll see what we can do around the fees as well. The main thing is we want to have members who are going to be active to help us achieve our cause. Okay, so let's move on very quickly to look at this issue at hand. So we are all aware of coronavirus, aka COVID-19, and the global impact that it's been having on businesses and of course employers. And the main issue has been around business continuity. So we know that all businesses around the world have been affected, whether positively or negatively, there's been an effect. And this has partially been down to the lockdowns, whether it's been partial lockdowns or restriction of movement, or it's been full lockdown where the whole country has been locked down. And part of those lockdowns is where the argument that e-commerce is benefiting has come from, and we'll move on to that. Work environments have changed. People are working from home. People are being sent home. People are working remotely. So the argument has been that people are more online, and therefore, again, it's a plus for e-commerce businesses. Of course, with that too, there has been impact on cash flow, supply chain, sales, on workers, and so on. So it's been having an impact in all areas of our businesses. And then the really fundamental one that we are all trying to navigate in between is the health and safety issues that has come with commerce. So we know, when I go into my next slide, consumers are struggling to go into the normal shop, brick and mortar, and so they are coming online. So this has led to a shift in consumer behavior due to this COVID-19. I've just mentioned it's had an impact on our business operations and safety, and this has led to a surge online globally. They've also been saying that coronavirus has changed the way that the consumer shops. They're saying that approximately 47% of polled respondents stated that they are avoiding malls and shopping centers. And actually, eCommerce Association of Ghana, we also did a survey specifically looking at Ghana in Africa, and we got similar responses, and I think we will put that report on the website so that you can go and download and see what the outcomes were. And people were actually saying that they are avoiding the malls and shops because of anxiety of catching coronavirus. We know that those who are using SEO for marketing, that's also gone up, is increased. People are reporting organic search visibility between the months of January and March. Many retailers have also moved their shops online in order to stay in business. And one of the areas that apparently are thriving, and I guess we'll find out from our panelists as when we start the conversation, is areas of people shopping for food online, for clothes, for entertainment. And they are saying that that is actually replacing people going to the stores and visiting the malls. And they're saying that up until a vaccine is available, this is going to be the way the consumer is kind of operating. So they're saying COVID is transforming the e-commerce. So retailers online are reporting revenue growth due to growth in online orders. Online conversion rates are being reported as increased. Mobile devices, meaning our mobile phones or tablets, etc., are the most popular device that people apparently are using to shop online. It has gone up really a lot from a lot of the research is being done. And then e-commerce being time-saving and efficient, and people feeling safe that they can be at home and order and then have their items delivered to them, is encouraging people to stay at home and of course shop online. However, more money, more problems, as they say. At the same time, the e-commerce online retail are having to deal with supply chain, order management, fulfillment systems. They are all being tested because, of course, they have these systems, but not a lot of them would not have anticipated this surge. So, of course, now your system is being tested as to how robust it is. So they are also having challenges, even though there is a revenue growth happening. And then, of course, well, customers, as they want things, they are quite demanding. They are opting to go on because they want to save time, but they want everything to also be done well. So it is putting a considerable strain on e-commerce retailers as well. Even though it's a plus, it's still they still have challenges. Then of course, cybersecurity is on the increase. We're being told, so that's another headache in ensuring that your customers can shop with you and shop with you safely. Customer experience challenges, from deliveries to long waits, or to delivery people not knowing where they're going, and all kinds of issues happening around the whole customer experience and delivery challenges. Then there's the question comes that, okay, there's more money, more problems now, but is this going to stay? Are we going to see this surge in customers going online? Is it going to stay? Is it going to stabilize? Or is it going to become less as the COVID, we find a vaccine as time goes on? These are some of the challenges that we in Ghana, and obviously looking at e-commerce African-wide, want to kind of discuss to see what is happening in our regions. Some of these research do cover the continent as well, but mainly are kind of covering outside. So today we want to talk about it from our perspective as the Ghana e-commerce, and also look at it in Africa, what's happening, and hoping that our panelists will be able to bring us insights to us as well. So on that note, I'm going to go to the first panelist, Albert, and I'm asking him what is the impact of COVID on e-commerce in Ghana and African-wide. I'm going to stop sharing my screen a minute because I'm going to share one that Albert wants to speak to, and he's going to talk us through the point there. Are you ready, Albert?
Yes, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, so your perspective, please, on this boom. So are you experiencing the boom, Albert? Am I coming to you for a loan?
Well, you should. So good morning again to everyone, my fellow panelists and attendees. I just want to, there are a couple of points that I want to share to set the tone for the conversation. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible, so that the interactive part of the session would hopefully be longer. Before I dig into the numbers and the stats, I think one of the panelists mentioned before we got online, something I'd like to rehash, which really has to do with the various models. It's important that we as a community, and of course the market, understands the clear distinctions in the various models of e-commerce companies that exist in the market. It's important not from a place of one model is better than the other, but it's more from understanding the model so as to understand the risks and the opportunities that are associated with it. So on the two extremes, you sort of have the marketplace and you have the online retail. Again, before I dig in, let me emphasize the fact that it's not the case of one is better than the other. They're just different models, and they have different risks and opportunities. One can liken it to a 4x4 salon, a salon car. They're built differently, and they're built for different purposes. So on one extreme, you have the marketplace, and I guess the most popular marketplace one can speak to is a Tonaton type model, where essentially the e-commerce company, as a tech company, is primarily a technology enabler. So what they've done, they've put together an e-commerce platform that allows shoppers and sellers to meet. So technically, in the marketplace setup, the e-commerce company is not involved directly in the business. They've created an enabling environment for buyers and sellers to meet. On the other extreme, you have online retail, and primarily ZudoShop is the premier or foremost online retail type setup, where you can look at it as you're buying directly from ZudoShop. Granted that the products are supplied by vendors, etc., but the transaction happens directly between you, the customer, or between the customer and ZudoShop. Now, in between these two extremes, there are several hybrids of models. You have the Groupon model, you have the classified model, which is sort of very close to the marketplace model, several other models. Again, it's important to understand the distinction, because one can then process with more clarity what the opportunities and the risks. I'm sure the individual panelists will speak to some of it. So that said, I just want to throw a bit of light on some of the numbers and stats, and it's important to point out that these stats were pre-COVID, so they're relatively conservative. My guess is that during and post-COVID, these numbers would grow exponentially. So currently we have something like 500 million internet users in Africa, close to 350 million smartphones and MIDs, mobile internet devices. It's estimated that there's something like 400 to 500 million e-commerce users in Africa today, and it's expected to grow closer to the 500 million mark by 2024. The e-commerce market is expected to gross something like 20 billion in 2020, and this number is growing exponentially. We're expecting to see a little under 20% of annual growth. Again, this is pre-COVID numbers. So my guess is that this growth will probably be inching towards the 25% mark, resulting in almost 40 billion by 2024. User penetration is 24% in 2020, and it's expected to hit a little under 40% by 2024. I would like to mention very quickly that this user penetration is skewed quite heavily because in Southern Africa, where we have some e-commerce interests as well, penetration is somewhere around 33%, and it's much lower in the rest of Africa. So that sort of skews the numbers quite a little bit. And the estimated average revenue per user currently is about $68. During and post-COVID, I expect this average basket to drop quite significantly because people are now shopping a lot more for other low-value items. So this average revenue per user, I suspect, will drop heavily. These numbers I picked up from an article from McKinsey, Lions Digital, and a Statista 2020 report on e-commerce in Africa. Anita, you can move to the next slide. That's more pictorial. So on the next slide, you sort of see a breakdown into the various, the various categories of products. Well, food and personal care is estimated to grow something like 5.5 billion in 2020. And if you're interested in other categories, I'll put a link there that can provide a bit more detail to it. Anita, next slide. So look, from my perspective, and I probably would like to end my piece with this from Jack Ma. It says, I hope in 15 years later, people forget about e-commerce because they think it's electricity. I guess the point he was making with his limited English was essentially to say, and this was in 2015, when 2020 now, we're closer to what he predicted more than ever. Essentially, the point was to say that e-commerce will become so essential that people will not be talking about it. It will be a part of our lives, just like it is the case with electricity. So my own thoughts are that, look, e-commerce, interestingly, didn't see a lot of growth on this continent up until about 10, 12 years ago. And since its insurgence, we've seen massive exponential growth. It's been strange that a lot of the multinationals who you would have expected would jump on immediately stuck somewhat to their old key distributor, old conventional models of distribution. And a lot of them have somewhat missed the bus. I think that what COVID has done, or what COVID will do, is will make a stronger case for e-commerce. The case for e-commerce obviously has always been very strong, but COVID has sort of pushed a lot more people to understand the urgency and the opportunity that e-commerce presents. For us, for example, at ZuberShop, we've seen massive interest from the multinational stroke importer stroke manufacturer side of things. Whereas the engagements prior to COVID were quite slow, we're seeing a lot more traction now where these large multinationals are eager to get on the bandwagon and are pushing it much faster than they typically would have pushed it. And so what are we seeing in terms of growth? We're seeing growth in the COVID-related products, obviously sanitizers, masks, etc. Grocery, food and drinks. We're also seeing growth in gadgets and entertainment devices and home DIY stuff. So yeah, in a summary, that's my small submission on the topic. The only other thing I'd love to add is the role of social commerce. And I know, Anita, you mentioned something about losing some money. It's also important to understand how social commerce plays in all of this. And if I attempt to define social commerce is essentially any e-commerce activity using any of the social network tools. It is estimated that in Africa, social commerce will account for over 50% of e-commerce in Africa. And I suspect that number is actually far more than 50%. There are a lot more small businesses, single one-man businesses, pushing out products and services on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And you have the large organizations like the Tonaton, Zuba Shops, Jumia's, etc. So that's an important part of the conversation that we cannot ignore. And so when we start the engagement on e-commerce Association of Ghana and somewhat regulating standards to make people more comfortable to shop, we have to place social commerce at the center of this engagement to ensure that they don't somewhat be a bad nut in the whole lot of e-commerce companies around. So that would just be my small bit.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you very much. That was very insightful. So you got some data there on what's happening on the continent, and then also actually on the products that are moving and what's expected to happen as we move along. Okay, so over to you, Joseph. Perhaps you want to give us a perspective as well on this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So as far as the impact of COVID, so for instance, Flutterwave, what we do is we just empower as far as giving merchants the ability to process payments. So for instance, if merchants want to process payments using their cards or they actually want to use mobile money, we give them that ability. So what we've seen so far from COVID is that more merchants are now coming online. Before, they used to be more like direct sales as far as cash payments, but more are coming online and using our platform, for instance, to actually make payments. So for instance, what Flutterwave done post-COVID is that we've actually rolled out our initiative, which is the Flutterwave store, which just gives you the ability to create a small e-commerce store online if you're registered with Flutterwave. So what you can do is you can just upload your items on the back end and then have a link where you display to your customers for them to make payments. And on the back end, they just make payments with either their mobile money accounts or they use their cards. So with the Flutterwave store initiative, we're seeing that more and more people are now signing up and actually displaying their wares online. So for instance, when we launched, I think about 3 weeks ago, we've already seen an uptick in registration as far as like 1,000+ people have already signed up across Africa, including Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa as well. So yeah, more people coming online as far as going with the e-commerce side, because they realize that more people are now coming to the stores because people are social distancing or staying at home. So now that has empowered or actually shifted the conversation that how do I make sales where people can come to my store or make direct purchases. So that has happened with Flutterwave. We've seen that more people coming online. We've seen an increase in as far as e-commerce stores making transactions online, making sales, doing transfers, all that. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of uptick in that field. Still in Ghana, for instance, people are still opting for cash, but mobile money has really been in the uptick as far as people making sales online. So yeah, that's just my perspective as far as e-commerce in Ghana and Africa as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joseph. And Daniel, Tonaton, what's happening?
Hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Yes. Okay. So with this whole COVID, I mean, I think it has actually been a form of an opportunity to take a lot of people or give people the opportunity to see the blessing in e-commerce. However, I think there have still been a problem in people shifting from traditional to e-commerce. One of the reasons being that, it's our culture to always maybe go to the supermarket or go to the market or go to a particular shop to make a purchase of something. So because that culture has been really ingrained in our system and in our lives, in our daily lives, people were still hesitant to move into e-commerce or to buy through online shops. But I think one of the opportunities, so one of the things that really pushed more people to try e-commerce or to purchase online was during the lockdown period. Because during the lockdown period, if you need an essential, if you need something for your home or for your family or for your business, you don't have an option than to find a way to look for a vendor online and buy for a vendor. So we saw a lot of surge when it comes to visitors on websites during that period. But as my brother Alfred straightly put it, we have e-commerce and as in online retailing, and we have the classifieds. And Tonaton is actually more in the classified section. So we provide the opportunity for buyers and for sellers to meet. So we realized that a lot of businesses started coming online to put their product and to open a membership shop. We saw authorized dealers coming to Tonaton to have their own e-commerce shop on Tonaton so that they can get buyers buying directly from them. So when we saw that surge during the lockdown period, we realized that it has actually increased exponentially after the lockdown period. And the reason is because after the lockdown period, now the businesses are able to transact business easily with their buyers. So we have a lot of sellers coming to Tonaton to post their products. And we have a lot of buyers also coming to Tonaton to deal with these sellers to transact business, basically. So that's, we've seen that area as well. And when it comes to it being maybe a temporary shift or permanent habit, I believe that, it takes 21 days to form a habit and then 90 days to form a lifestyle. And during this period, a lot of people have actually formed a very strong lifestyle when it comes to buying e-commerce. However, I think the major problem that has prevented and avoided this from surging strongly as it could have been is number one, being the trust of buying online. A lot of people have trust issues buying online because, as I said earlier, it's not a culture. People are not used to paying money to someone online and then having to have the product delivered to them. And this is what I'm talking about, the online retailing. Another thing I believe has prevented this from surging greatly as it could have been is because of the internet penetration in Ghana. Now we have a lot of people who don't have access to internet, or even if they have access to internet, they don't have access to fast internet. And even if they have access to fast internet, we haven't seen any of the internet service providers putting in any effort to even reduce internet costs or give some special bonuses during this period to help people use the internet. So because of that, especially with the situation of internet penetration, we've not seen a lot of people going online and even trying the online system. And also, even apart from the internet penetration, when it comes to online retailing, we have maybe most of the businesses are based in Accra. And during the lockdown period, when we didn't have access to other regions, to Kumasi, to Cape Coast and all that, someone can buy something online from Kumasi or from Takoradi or from Tamale, but because of the lockdown restrictions, those people won't have the opportunity to have the product access, they won't have the opportunity to have the products delivered to them because of all these online restrictions. So all these kind of became a stumbling block to ensure the great surge of internet, which the COVID presented the opportunity, basically. And when it comes to most of the product or most of the stocking product to ensure that we are delivering to clients, I mean, we are used to, or retailers are used to, okay, we have this number of products, or we have this product, and we have suppliers in these places, and they have their data over all these years, that maybe in this quarter or in this part of the year, these are the number of products we need, or these are the inventory we need because of the data we had. But because of COVID, everything was disrupted, because if you know that maybe you must receive products from your suppliers and the product must take, let's say, 45 days or 30 days. Now the borders were closed and manufacturers' work were disrupted. So now instead of receiving your product within 30 days or 45 days, you can receive it in 60 days or even in 80 days. So I believe it has also disrupted a lot of activities and inventory and the supply chain basically of most of the people who work in the e-commerce space in Ghana. These are the few I want to talk about now, even as we continue with this conversation.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was very insightful. Okay, so my first question was going to be, are we feeling the growth in Ghana and Africa-wide? And I think you've kind of, from your synopsis, sorry, all of you, you've kind of indicated, yes, there's been some, but probably not as as much as we would have thought. That most of it was during the lockdown, and pretty much maybe things that are kind of going back to normal, but there has been an increase. So that's positive. I think that's a positive stance to build from, because at least people would have experienced it for the first time. So we know that as commerce businesses, we just need to work on making it more of a permanent, ongoing affair throughout. Okay, and then Albert.
Anita, just to add to your question one, whether we've seen growth, I've seen some preliminary numbers, again, from McKinsey, speaking to growth during COVID, and suggestions are that they've seen significant growth, talking something in the something like 60% range, but primarily along the COVID-related products, and they are talking medical supplies, etc., which raises one of the conversations that we've been having offline of whether or not a Pharmaceutical Association of Ghana, FDA, and the associated regulatory bodies have an interest in seeing medical supplies online via e-commerce, and what kind of regulatory framework that they will put in place to make it easy for us to play in that space. So yes, we've seen growth, but we probably would have seen a lot more growth if we were playing in the medical supplies, retail medical supplies, stroke drugs, etc. space. That would have been an interesting side to look at.
That's quite insightful. So would you say then as we are in COVID now, in fact now we're having to coexist until a vaccine or some form of medication is found, would you say that this did they indicate this trend will carry on whilst we're coexisting or whilst we're still in the pandemic, the increase in the medical supplies, do you think? Is it
the most conservative estimates put us getting out of the new normal at close to the end of the year. These are the most conservative estimates we're getting. Obviously, things like travel, etc., might start a little earlier at the beginning of Q4, possibly. But the fact is that we're never going to return to what they call the old normal. There are lots of aspects of our life that's going to change. Travel is never going to be the same again. E-commerce and the way we do business is never going to be the same again. So I suspect that this growth will carry on till the end of the year at the minimum.
Okay, then when we move on to like products, generally it's being said that groceries, apparel, like clothes and entertainment are, people are purchasing them online. Are you seeing this happening, Albert, Zuba Shop? I know Diane's having a few difficulties joining us with her audio. We hope she'll be able to join us before we close. But are you seeing, what products are moving most in Ghana outside of the medical supplies that you just mentioned, like normal products? Are there any products or service that people are patronizing more through your commerce space? And maybe Tonaton, you can also speak in on here.
Well, gadgets, smartphones, entertainment devices, so somewhat have always been in the forefront of the products that move on e-commerce. And yes, we are seeing growth in those category of products, home DIY stuff, groceries, food and drinks. And that's also possibly another point where you mentioned, the groceries, food and drink space, well, more like groceries and food space, is quite a tricky space, especially when you're talking uncooked food. Well, even with cooked food and the handling required, etc. So that's another space that we might need to have an in-depth conversation about in respect to people feeling comfortable about the carriage that happens when they order these kinds of products.
Daniel, Tonotom has a much more diverse platform, i.e. sellers are coming on to sell all sorts. What products has been moving, or like what have you been picking up? Is it similar to what Albert's been picking up on Zuba Shop, or what's been happening there?
Okay, so we realized that when it comes to essentials, So we have created a new category called the essentials, where supermarkets and any company or organization that sells essentials can come and list their products there and then have it delivered to buyers, basically. So we've realized a surge in people being interested in posting their essentials on the site. And another thing we've realized that people that's also really moving more is in regard to electronics, phones, and I mean, all forms of electronics. And currently, those are the two things that are really moving really fast here.
Okay, thank you. So that's quite useful there to know what you can buy as well as what's moving fast. So here in the question 3, I'm asking that do we think that COVID would permanently change the consumers' online buying habits in Ghana or Africa-wide, or do we think it's going to kind of change back to how it was before COVID? In some, I mean,
well, look, my take, I think it was Daniel, I'm not sure whether it was Daniel or Joseph that mentioned earlier that tech savviness is one of the things that has sort of derailed some of the growth that we would have seen in e-commerce in this country. Because generally, people don't know how to maneuver online. I saw a study that suggested that there's a high correlation between e-commerce growth and government e-systems or e-governance systems, typically because once you start getting used to doing things online, paying taxes online, filing for returns online, you generally get comfortable maneuvering online, and it tends to also spur on the e-commerce growth. So what I suspect will happen is that COVID is forcing a lot of us to do stuff online. A webinar like this would have been unthought of before. So the more people spend time online, chances are that the stronger the case to be made for doing everything else online, including commercial activity. So definitely during and post COVID-19 pandemic will change behaviors quite significantly. And well, we're talking 21, 90 days, whatever. I suspect very strongly that these will change the shopping patterns quite permanently going forward.
That's fantastic to know. That's good. So now moving on to the payments, digital payments on the continent. Generally, we know that there's been like a boost in trying to in the aim to try and get to this cash-lite society. And so it comes to mind that you would have to ask, can our payment platforms sustain these current impact of e-commerce in Africa, or are they scalable enough to hold this spike or growth that we're discussing?
Yeah, so I can definitely speak on that. So with Flutterwave, like we said, we have markets in different, on the continent. For instance, we are in Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. So even though we have seen a spike in more e-commerce activities, we were able to handle it because of the investment put in our infrastructure. So yes, we're still seeing more demand, but we're also holding steady, trying to put in more measures to make sure that we're always up online. And also we're always working with our partners, for instance, as far as like maybe the mobile money operators, to make sure that people who use mobile money payments and transactions are always online. So yeah, it's basically trying to keep that sustainability going, working with partners and working with international partners as well to make sure that online on our back end that we keep going, keeping the lights on, and keep on helping our merchants and our customers to make payments, to make sure that they can keep making transactions and keep scaling as much as they can.
So in terms of the payment platform, which ones remain still popular with consumers when they're paying for their products online?
Yeah, so in Ghana, what we've noticed that mobile money is still the most popular option for payments. We have seen some uptick in card payments. Most of course, is mostly, I think, some merchants or customers outside the country make payments in Ghana and they use their cards more often. But if you go to markets like Nigeria, for instance, they're more card heavy. So they use more card payments when they're making transactions. Same way we see in South Africa, but in the East African countries like Kenya and Uganda, you see more M-Pesa payments, for instance. So in Ghana, card payments are still low, even though they're rising, but mobile money is still definitely the most popular option as far as payments online.
Joseph, if you're kind of drawing insights from the different behaviors, let's say between Nigeria and Ghana, what do you think Nigeria have done well to kind of have a higher uptake of using cards to make payments versus maybe what we're doing here? Because obviously we're trying to improve and increase this a journey into like a cash-lite society. So what insights there as to what?
So I think it has to do with the fact that I think in Nigeria, they were more, they had policy pushing for more cashless a bit faster. So for instance, they were encouraging more point of sale devices for people. So what happens in Nigeria is that you have maybe small businesses using more point of sale devices for making payments. So it quickly scaled up. And because in Nigeria, they didn't really push for the mobile money segment, the card option became very popular, even though cash was still in heavy rotation, but point of sale devices were more popular. The banks were offering them at a very good rate as far as purchasing or renting. So more businesses got on board the card payment side. So yes, you do see a lot more card payments. So people are more comfortable using card payments, knowing that when they make a purchase and they have an issue, you can quickly go to the bank, maybe get a refund as quickly as possible, as compared to Ghana, where we're still kind of in that stage of trying to force more of our policy going towards cash-lite. The Bank of Ghana is making some improvements as far as the policy goes, but mobile money is still the winner in that space because people are more used to that arena, more method of using those payments. So it'll be hard for card payments to catch up compared to Nigeria. That is my opinion, I think.
And just to add to what Joseph just spoke about, one of the underpinning factors why card growth will not happen for a while in Ghana is that we still have card processing fees at anything between 2 and 3.5% of the transaction amount. Mobile money is anything between 1.5%. And this is a charge that we, the e-commerce companies, have to bear. In addition, the card bearers are also charged anything from $1 to $5 per transaction. So generally, transaction fees on cards are quite heavy. I think what they've succeeded in doing in Nigeria, obviously because of volume, is to drive the card transaction fees much lower to I think about the 1.25% mark. That.
Right.
That's a big reason why. Sorry, that's a big reason why card adoption is not happening here in Ghana.
I guess that I hear, Albert, becomes another to-do list on the e-commerce association to engage with the banks and to look at these fees, because the whole idea is to try to grow the industry, and if the fees may be a catalyst, then we're going to have to champion to see what we can do about it. Because it's true, if I'm going to use mobile money and it's going to be cheaper than using my card, of course I'm going to go with the one that charges me less, or that eliminates no charge.
And it's not just, Anita, it's not just from a customer's perspective. It's also from the e-commerce company. I mean, margins on mobile phones and gadgets are dropping to anything between 3 to 5% on the product. Now, if a card transaction charges me 2.5%, 3.5%, that's all my margin gone. So there are real issues we need to look at as far as card adoption is concerned.
Exactly. Okay, thank you for that. It's a good one there to pick up on. And then here we're talking about, this particular question was around, I know I mentioned the cybersecurity briefly, but this continues to, obviously, this is no different from if we're talking about e-commerce in the UK or America. Cybersecurity, is a global issue. But specifically kind of looking at our space, you know, what can e-commerce businesses do, or maybe you can share some of the things you're doing to boost the confidence of consumers shopping online and paying online in relation to security on using the platforms to shop, etc.
Look, I think there are three parts of it. I'm sorry, just quick one. I think there are three parts of it. Everybody has a role. E-commerce Association of Ghana and the whole community, the whole.
Oh, I think Albert's having slight technical issues on there.
Sorry, but the most important thing is also the education we need to do as far as customers are concerned. I mean, I've heard stories of people. Sorry. So I've heard stories, for example, of guys who got defrauded because they paid money into a bank account of somebody who promised to sell them a BMW, which is supposed to be located in Tamale. And so in that sense, there's some bit of customer, for want of a better word, stupidity here. I mean, if you were buying a physical product, there's some amount of due diligence you will do ahead of purchasing the product. So I don't see that there's anything different when you're operating online. So I think as far as security is concerned, everybody has a role. We as e-commerce companies, we need to keep our part of the bargain. We need to keep our service levels up. E-commerce Association of Ghana, together as an ecosystem, we need to do some education. But the customers need to come to the party as well. I mean, customers need to do the simple due diligence things that they will do going to a brick and mortar store. So for example, I don't go to Circle and go and buy an iPhone 5 or iPhone 10 Plus off the streets. Now, if you go to a social commerce one guy shop and go and buy an iPhone 10 Plus, it's the equivalent of going to Circle. So there's just some basic due diligence that customers also need to take responsibility for.
I think that's a valid point there. That it's a scenario that everybody has a role to play, from the customer down to the association down to the commerce business. Okay, now the supply chain. You know, any recommendations on the supply chain management in terms of, you know, how to make it diverse, resilient to these demand surges, or as we move into this new normal, lots of things are being said around the supply chain, and we know that a lot of people, they're saying the surges has been having some issues for supply chains for some e-commerce businesses. So any recommendations or, you know, examples that you can give to kind of help other commerce people maybe listening on how to diversify and be a bit more resilient to the demands that may be occurring?
Okay, so when it comes to the supply chain, one thing I would love to recommend is, especially when it comes to the beginning of the supply chain, that is getting the products from the suppliers. Even as Albert said, maybe from now to the end of the year, it's likely to be this new normal. So one thing that we must put in place is to know that it's very possible that if your suppliers are not in Ghana, it's going to take way longer to get the products as compared to previously. So if previously it could take you, let's say, 30 days, now it will take you up to 60 days with some delays that you may not even envision. So we have to put all that into consideration and possibly get some products in advance in case you are likely to run out of stock. So we have to look at the products that move the most. So maybe out of maybe 100 products, you know that these 20 products are the products that move the most. We have to put in that effort to get more of that product to avoid any delays in the future. And also another thing I think we can do is build more partnerships with other suppliers. Maybe we've been working with one particular supplier for quite some time. We can diversify the suppliers and then maybe find more suppliers and build good relationship with them, so that if we're able to build a very solid relationship with them, they can give us a form of a flexible terms of payment, or they can give us some form of discount if we are buying in bulk. because we buy in bulk now more than the usual because we know that there could be delays and we are trying to get more products in store. So that's one thing that I would want to add.
Very good. That's very good tips there, actually. Did anyone want to add anything on here before I move on diversifying? And it was covered it. Okay, let's move on. So now, of course, logistics plays a very key role in e-commerce, i.e., as from bringing the products in, putting them on our stores to getting it to the customers. And we heard during the COVID that Amazon had some of its delivery people contracting the COVID amidst doing their work. So I wanted to bring that up because obviously we are also in the e-commerce. That's why we're having this conversation to kind of ask, like, what measures could or should e-commerce businesses put in place to assure online buyers of their safety, number one, in receiving their goods, making sure that it's not contaminated. And then we'll move on to talk about delivery challenges. So the first one is what are some of the things that you've been doing to make sure that goods are received safely?
Okay, so one thing is, heavy awareness on all the measures that is being put in place to ensure the safety of the customers. Most of the customers will have their own fears. Most of them are not sure what's happening. So one of the things that we are doing is to give assurance, strong assurance to all customers of the safety precautions that is being taken at Tonaton to ensure our safety and their safety as well. Also, face mask is currently the new normal. In fact, currently is an offense not to be wearing face masks in Ghana. So we just ensure that courier personnel are always in their face masks and sanitize their hands before they package the stuff. Before they start unloading the packages as well, they have to sanitize their hands and then ensure social distance. Very good distancing during delivery.
Fantastic.
So for us at Zuba Shop, the way we look at it is this, that the primary concern somewhat, yes, is of the team members, not, well, yes, of the customers, but also of the team members. And once one adopts that mentality that I want to protect myself, invariably that protects the customer as well. So you're ensuring that wherever it is you're picking up an item from, it's well cleaned up, it's dusted down, it's sprayed if where applicable, ultimately to protect yourself. But once in trying to protect yourself, you invariably are protecting the end user, who is the customer as well. So for us, the focus has been to protect ourselves, which is as important, and then obviously also protecting the customer and ensuring the products that get delivered are completely safe.
What about in relation to delivery challenges? In terms of the couriers getting the products to the customers. For example, if I speak from my own experience, I've ordered some things and I was not told okay, maybe we'll deliver it between 9 and 12 or 12 and 5 or some kind of time span so that you kind of know that, okay, I must be alert. And then also a lot of the delivery people are not really using whether Google Maps or GPS, whatever you want to call it. So it becomes really stressful for you, the customer, to kind of direct them into your house. In two instances, I literally had to get in my car, drive and meet them at a neutral place in order to collect my products, which I felt defeated the purpose of kind of bringing it to me. So what kind of delivery challenges or improvement logistic wise do commerce business also have to think about in order to ensure the customer experience is not affected by logistics on delivery?
Look, one of the things also we have to acknowledge is that demand on dispatch and delivery in general has significantly gone up. There's been a significant surge because from e-commerce companies now, there's everything, there's Wache, everything else has driven up the demand on delivery and logistics. So there's a lot of catch up that we're playing as far as that concern. But again, the issue with technology and location, etc., it's not just on the e-commerce or the social commerce side. It's also on the customer side. There are recurring cases where when an order is placed, we send a text message to the customer as part of confirmation of the order, requiring the customer to reply with a location so that we don't have to call them for directions. And quite a number of customers simply don't know how to use the technology. So I think the surge has caught up with us. A lot of this learning will happen over time, both on the social commerce players and also on the customer side of things. So we will sort of, the growth is being forced upon us, and we will see improvements in service delivery also over the period.
Fantastic, thank you. And then, of course, I think it was Joseph who may have mentioned, or maybe it was Daniel, about the fact that the ISPs are not really reducing the prices of data, etc., to encourage people to use, to come online or to shop, or it's not helping the situation. I was asking here, what can they do to maintain high speed and affordable prices? And I think he actually mentioned that reducing the prices and working on making the access more being more faster. Is there anything else that we think we can get our ISPs can do to help us with our growth?
So we've come a long way from obviously the dial-up modem era where internet was not that reliable. I know you want to place emphasis on the cost side of things, but I still think internet in this country is substandard, to put it mildly. This morning I was downloading a 55 meg file, and it took me almost 30 minutes to download the file. It's still very ridiculous. I mean, the guy who sent me the file sent it from our office in South Africa, and I just assumed that downloading a 55 meg file is not a conversation to have. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have split it up into 3-4 emails. But it's still a challenge. Reliability, speed is still a big challenge, even before we start talking whether or not the cost should go down. Obviously, the demand has gone up, so I suspect that the ISPs can afford to slash prices or throw in some concessions. But I'm more concerned about the quality of the kind of internet that we get around here. And I'm talking internet from supposedly the best service providers, supposed to be fiber, etc. It's still nothing to write home about. For me, that's where my concern will be, because my business runs on internet. So the more reliable, the cheaper, etc. it becomes, the more it enables my business.
So the infrastructure is a key factor. I think during COVID, we've kind of seen also where their strengths and weaknesses are, because it's not been easy in some instances with the services going down, and So I think that they themselves, I'm hoping they will see that their infrastructure, if they're going to meet the demand, they need to improve upon it, because it's been found wanting in places.
Yeah, and I'll love to add to this. Everything about e-commerce and online is directly connected to internet access. I mean, e-commerce and online transactions won't make sense without internet. So that's why in July 2016, the United Nations declared access to internet to be a human right, because they've realized that in the future, I mean, for people to even have access to information, for people to do a lot of things, they will need access to internet. And when this COVID started, I was expecting that even if not necessarily the government, the internet service providers, I don't know if they have a body or they have an association, would come together to find a way to reduce internet costs in Ghana. Because, for example, in Colombia, the government issued a decree which recognizes telecommunication service as an essential and established that their provision cannot be suspended for lack of payment. So people just had access to internet. A lot of countries did all these things, and even in the UK, the main internet service provider agreed that they remove data caps on fixed line broadband during the coronavirus pandemic. And even Vodafone in the UK was part of this. Vodafone in the UK was putting in effort to ensure that people have access to internet easily, even in the UK. So I don't understand why in Africa, or let me say in Ghana, because in South Africa, the telecommunications also requested that mobile operators, help people have access to the internet easily. That happened in South Africa. But nothing has been done in Ghana since March till now. I have not seen any telco come out to say, okay, during this COVID period, we are putting this in place. We are putting that in place, or giving some special offers to help people easily have access to the internet. And if this is not being done, and if this isn't done, internet penetration and e-commerce and online transaction and everything will be something very difficult to implement in Ghana and in Africa. So that's my that's something I also have to say about this.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, we're nearly done, coming up to the end of this. The last question on these general questions is around customer service. My question 9, not 8, is how can e-commerce businesses ensure good customer experience and service? Because we know we already have a few problems with customer experience and service already in Ghana and Africa wide. So now we're going online. That's another realm, let's say, that we're adding on in terms of service. And so we have to think about that, because that experience is not necessarily the physical, So what can we do to ensure good experience for our customers?
Look, for us at Zuba Shop, service is at the center of everything we do, and we feel like service is even more important online than it is offline. I mean, granted that we're in a country where generally service levels are at unacceptable levels. Reason why I feel, or we at Zuba Shop feel like service is a big thing, is that unlike brick and mortar stores where you get to physically see the person, so in the event that they're unhappy, you're able to tell and you're able to manage the situation. The problem with e-commerce is that you almost have no touch point to the customer. So the entirety of the customer experience has to be awesome from start to finish. From the experience that they have going online, being able to identify products, being able to search easily, being able to sort, compare, to picking up the product, the interaction that happens. Is it a phone call? Is it a text message? Is there any way I can follow up on my order, payment options? We talked about delivery location, all of that. But for e-commerce, that entire process has to be seamless. And I think probably the same for all the other Tonaton, Jumia, and all the other e-commerce companies. It's even more important as an e-commerce operation that services at the center than it is for a brick and mortar store. It's absolutely important, and it's the entirety of the experience from start to finish.
Yes. I totally agree with Albert on this, because as he said, unlike the brick and mortar stores, I mean, they actually put in a system to ensure that there's a good customer experience. But sometimes most companies feel like because it's online, they don't put in that much effort. So for example, at Tonaton, we have a whole quality assurance team that ensures that the customer experience is, excellent. So we ensure that even when customers have complaints or when calls come in, every call is tracked, and we ensure that the quality of even how much the experience we give to our clients is top notch. And customer experience also has to do with even the user experience on your site. So I remember you were saying earlier, Anita, that it's possible you went to our site and you've seen some changes. Yes, Tonaton is committed to ensuring that we continuously improve on our site. We use a Kaizen method, continuous improvement. So we make sure that we listen to our customers, we listen to what our customers are saying, we have methods and systems to ensure that anybody that comes to our site has a very good customer experience. So I totally agree with what Albert is saying. Customer experience is very, very important, especially when it comes to online e-commerce. And I hope that all other companies will also adopt such methods to ensure good customer and user experience for customers.
It's very key. Very key.
I just want to add something real quick. Yeah, so as a payment platform for most of the markets in Africa, so we also have to be on our toes when it comes to customer experience, because we're dealing with people's monies and how to actually help them get their monies as far as settlement to their bank accounts or their wallets. So we also have our customer success team always on deck, trying to make sure everything is up to speed. So we have our customer contact points. So we have email. You can actually contact our customer service through the dashboard when you log into our platforms. You can speak directly to us. So we always try to reduce that time where you send an email, for instance, and get a response back, so we can actually deal with the issue. So yeah, as my fellow panelists said, you need to have that perfect customer experience, always be on top. Always don't leave the customer hanging. When they have an issue, you should immediately address it and try to resolve that problem within maybe 5-10 minutes immediately.
Very good. The customer experience is key to commerce. I mean, if people have one negative experience, that could be the end of them maybe patronizing your business again. Okay. Now, I wanted to before I go, I'm just making sure. Okay, I think we've answered all the questions. I was trying to check that I asked. We've touched on all the questions that the other participants have been putting. So now we've had quite a very good conversation. It's been quite insightful. I've taken a lot out of it. I'm sure our participants have as well. So it brings us to this point to kind of answer our question that we began with, which is that is the African e-commerce ready for post-COVID-19 demand and surge? Maybe I'll start with you, Albert, and then we'll move across, and I'll just make sure that we've answered everyone's questions whilst you're responding before we.
So I'm not sure I'm completely clued on the question though. Is Africa e-commerce ready for post-COVID demand surge? Well, the truth is that we don't have a choice. The drive or the exponential growth as far as e-commerce is concerned during and post COVID-19 is going to happen. And the question is whether as businesses, whether we have positioned ourselves adequately to take advantage of it. Most of the companies, and as the panelists have alluded to, are seeing significant surge in numbers. And the question is, what are we doing with this surge? This is our opportunity to make a case for e-commerce as we've been trying to do over the past, 7 to 10 years, except that now the business is being delivered to us on a silver platter. And so things that we're required to do, some of which we've talked about, customer experience, ensuring that the experience is seamless and the customers really enjoy the experience. These are the things that's going to determine whether the customers are going to stay with us or they're going to look for other alternatives using social commerce, etc. But I think the business is going to come. Business is going to grow. It's estimated at about 20 billion for 2020. I think with COVID, maybe about 25 billion. So we just need to take advantage of the market. The question is, are we ready as e-commerce companies? And I think for me, there are two things that would be key drivers. Number one is service. The entire experience has to be one that is worth it for the customer. So customer experience would be number one. And number two, the conversations around education and making sure that customers are well sensitized to know where they're buying from, doing proper due diligence. Those for me would be the two key drivers, even before we start talking things, internet quality, internet cost, etc. But for me, the two key drivers will be the service experience and education as far as the customers are concerned. So I'm pretty excited about what the E-Commerce Association of Ghana is doing. I'm hoping we can come together as an ecosystem and push the drive on education so that we can benefit immensely from the growth.
Thank you, Albert. Joseph, what's your take? In fact, before you respond, I've had someone make the point that we shouldn't be talking post-COVID and that the disruption is here. Post-COVID suggests we're waiting for 2021, 2022. Actually, I think that we are already living this new normal. Like we're kind of in it. I think when we talk post-COVID, we're talking about when we go into the times where there's not so much anxiety to go out because maybe there's a vaccination or medication, so people are a bit more freer to move when we kind of make reference to post. But very much what we're talking about, we are making reference to as we're in it now, as we move towards that time of normality where we were all kind of free to move and touch each other and be free. That's what we're talking about when we kind of mention the post. Okay, so over to you, Joseph. Are we ready? What's your take on your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, so as Albert said, we have no choice basically. We just have to, right now what we have to do is just kind of innovate and adapt. So what we need to do is embrace what's happening as far as digitization and also e-commerce. So if you are a e-commerce store, or before you were actually just a physical store location, you have to maybe outline what your plans are for going digital, because your customers now are practicing social distancing and not necessarily going to physical stores to actually make purchases. So you have to be ready. So how do you set up your e-commerce store? Do you use a platform like Zuba Shop, or do you just set up your own e-commerce platform and just have a payment process at the end to receive mobile money or card payments? So yes, so I think we just have to innovate and just adapt to the new times we're living in and try to be a bit more digital, try to look for options as far as how to keep your business going using digital methods and means, and how to adapt for these new changing times.
Thank you for that. Yes, and Daniel, your final thoughts on readiness.
Okay, so what I'll say is that Africa e-commerce has always been ready. We have always been ready because we have always been fighting for and educating the public to take e-commerce as the next step. COVID has just brought that opportunity. So I believe we, for the e-commerce companies, have always been ready. It's the general public that hasn't been ready. And I believe even currently, the general public isn't ready. So it's up to us, for example, the e-commerce association, and then the players in the market, and if possible, with government support, educate the people, help those who don't even have access to the internet, have access to them. The government can, and the e-commerce association with all the players can work on something. The ISPs must come on board to help, because they are basically one of the main sources to propel e-commerce. So for the Africa e-commerce, the players in the market have always been ready. It's the general public that isn't ready. And well, gradually they are getting on board, but we can propel this by coming on board and increasing education and putting anything that we can to make this a great success, to get to the pinnacle.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. I do believe that it is all stakeholders coming in together to make it work, definitely. And we know that as an e-commerce association, we have a lot of work to do. So that's why, as at the beginning, I was saying, I'm hoping that as members join, that we're going to be an active association, because it's from our activities and our activist moves that will bring some of these change. And actually in numbers, you have a louder voice in numbers than you do as an individual voice. So the numbers, the more of us join, the more voice we have when we're engaging with an ISP, or if we go to government, whether it's infrastructure or laws, etc. So it's quite exciting times for us, and obviously as an association we're very excited because there's a lot of key things that we are going to have to champion on behalf of our members and the industry. So definitely I agree that we are probably ready, but definitely there's a lot of work to do for our customers. Thank you. So on that note, just a very brief summary, that from all that we've been saying, I think the general gist is that, e-commerce is so powerful now that customers are online, and this is the time, if you're an e-commerce business, to capitalize, taking into account some of the things that we have discussed around customer, around logistics, around payments. We know there are a few challenges because the surge has kind of come all at once, but it does not take away from the opportunities right now, and then of course moving into this our new normal. So you know, in conclusion, that's one of the things I want to highlight, and then also really around the supply chain, because that's what could potentially impact, you know, your success. You know, really looking at how you diversify, taking attention on what's moving, and really making making sure that whatever you're selling, you know, it can survive. It has resilience. It can survive should we go into any more problems. I mean, we've heard that China had 57 days of no cases being reported, and that yesterday they have reported a case, and they're kind of going towards maybe second lockdowns and things. So we're not really out of COVID. So, you know, for that reason, the opportunity really is there for us as commerce businesses to align as quickly as we have been doing to make sure that we capitalize on this opportunity and keep it going post-COVID-19. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my panelists. Unfortunately, Diana couldn't be with us. She had some technical issues, but that's not a problem. You will be engaging with these leaders in the industry at various times as we look at various topics and issues. So if she wasn't here today, you will find another time to engage her. So I'd like to thank my panelists, Albert, who have been great, and also Joseph and Daniel for spending time with us. Your insights have been amazing. I have actually taken a lot that's going to help me to review a few things on my e-commerce site. And we are very much looking forward to your inputs and of course supporting, driving forward some of these issues that we've been talking about. And we're so grateful that, you know, every time we come to you, you're ready to come and share insights with our participants and members who've joined us today. So I want to thank you all so much for your time. It's really, really appreciated. And then also to thank our audience, those of you who were able to join us. We will be sharing the link to the webinar, and of course we'll be sharing it to others who registered who perhaps were not able to join us. We did get quite a large registration, so we hope when we send it, they will also listen and take some of the insights that those of us who are here have benefited from. Just a reminder that you can join the e-commerce association at www.ecommerceassociationgh.com. And if you have any additional questions or comments, or if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists, you can actually contact us, and we'll be able to help you to be put in touch with them. So on that note, I would like to say thank you very much and have a very good day. And thank you for spending time with the E-Commerce Association of Ghana. Thank you very much and goodbye.